Today, let's discuss the types of control chart and how to decide which one you should use. Hi, this is Mike Nigami, Lean Sigma Black Belt. Today's topic is from this request. Could you please make a video about what the difference between an Xbar R control chart and Xbar S control chart is, and what an R control chart, Xbar control chart, P control chart are? Tan, thank you very much for your request. I totally understand why he made this request. There are many types of control charts and there are very few learning materials that easily explain this topic out there. I'll tell you beforehand that while I won't show you any formulas, I'll explain the differences between the 8 control charts in an easy to understand way. By the way, I made a template of an Xbar R control chart and a video about how to interpret the result after creating a control chart. You may want to watch that video first to understand the basics. I'll answer the first question about the difference between the Xbar R and Xbar S control charts. The left chart is the Xbar R control chart, and the right shows the Xbar S control chart as examples. Each of the control charts consists of 2 control charts. Both of the upper halves are Xbar control charts, with the averages of the data groups dotted in chronological order. You can see a big flow of data with this chart. The lower half of the Xbar R is the R control chart. R stands for range and is the difference between the maximum value and the minimum value of each data group. The R chart dots the range values in chronological order. On the other hand, the lower half of the Xbar S is the S control chart, which stands for standard deviation and dots the standard deviations of each data group. Both have the same purpose, and you can see the variation of the data group with them. Now, how can you use the Xbar R and Xbar S control charts differently? It depends on sample size. In practice, we periodically measure data as samples. The sample size is how many samples you take at the time. Actually, I'll show you the source data of 2 control charts. This is the Xbar R control chart and its source data. Its sample size is 5. As the sample size of the data group increases, the R control chart loses its accuracy. If so, the S control chart is better for larger sample size. Although here is no global standard, in general, if the sample size is 9 or less, we use the R control chart. If it's more than 9, we use the S control chart. This is the source data of the Xbar S control chart. In this example, the sample size is 12. The answer was quite easy. The Xbar R is control chart with the Xbar and the R control charts. The Xbar S is a control chart with the Xbar and the S control charts. It becomes a little challenging. The next question, how do you use the other control charts differently? There is one answer. It depends on the data you use. I made a quick reference table. The control charts are divided into 2 groups according to the type of data you use. The first group is variable. It has measured values such as length, weight, temperature, voltage, etc. This data type is continuous numbers and it can have decimal numbers and negative values. Then we'll divide the group more. The next checkpoint is their sampled conditions. As I mentioned earlier, if the sample size is consistent and more than 9, use the Xbar S control chart. 9 or less, use the Xbar R control chart. When data is very biased, it may be better to use the median rather than the average. So you may rather want to use MER control chart. Sometimes you may not have a consistent sample size for some reason. Then the sample size would be 1 and we would dot each data value. The control chart is a XR control chart. The other data type has counted value. We call it an attribute. We usually count the number of defects or defectives. Since this is counting numbers, it cannot have decimal numbers or negative values, and the control chart to be used depends on whether you are targeting defects or defectives. What's the difference between the two? For example, if there are 3 scratches on one manufactured part, the number of defects is 3 and the number of defectives is 1. The next checkpoint is the sample condition. However, unlike before, the difference in size doesn't matter, but whether the sample size can be consistent or not matters. From these 2 checkpoints, the following 4 control charts will come out. If you want to manage the number of defects and can keep the sample size consistent, record only the number of defects and use the C chart. C stands for count. You simply dot the numbers of defects. When the sample size is not consistent, you cannot compare the face value, so it's necessary to record the number of samples each time as well. Then use an U chart. U stands for unit. You dot the defect percentages per unit, which are the number of defects divided by the number of samples. Next is the case where you want to manage the number of defectives. Like the U chart, if you can't have the sample size consistent, record the number of defectives and the number of samples. Then use the P chart. P stands for proportion. You'll dot the defectives percentages, which are the number of defectives divided by the number of samples. Lastly, when you want to manage the number of defectives and can make the sample size consistent, record only the numbers of defectives and use an NP chart. NP stands for number and P stands for proportion. The total number times proportion percentage equal number of defectives, and you dot the numbers of defectives. The conclusion is very simple. The type of your control chart will be decided naturally depending on what you want to manage, what kind of data you can get, and if you can have consistent sample size or not. It's better to rely on software to create control charts these days. For example, the software I use is QI Macros, which is an Excel add-in. After you prepare appropriate data, this software determines the type of control chart and make it automatically. Thank you very much for viewing. Please click the subscribe button. Also, click and watch my other related videos. Thanks.